Kardos, the founder of AS Press, and I'll start that again. Just started recording. So hello, everyone. I'm Adam Kardos, founder of AS Press and the creator of the merize dictionary. Thanks a lot to Tokyo Jelt for the opportunity to present today about digital gamification for young learners. I'm just going to share my screen here. Ooh, not that. Here we go. Okay. Today, rather than do a deep dive on one particular program and kind of show you all the features and that kind of thing, I'm going to look at 3 different programs in reference to motivation theory, and also take a little bit of a look at cognition and what sort of cognitive thinking skills the different apps use. And hopefully the main takeaway of the presentation will be kind of a way to consider the purpose, potential, and suitability of different apps for learning language, particularly in an educational context, not as an individual end user. So really quickly, I'm going to go through 3 concepts that I'm going to borrow from as we go through the different apps. The first one is the difference between game-based learning and gamification. The second one, self-determination theory, a theory of motivation. And finally, we'll look a little bit at Bloom's taxonomy, not in much depth since it is a very short presentation, but I'll make reference to these things as we look at the apps. So the 3 apps that I've chosen to look at here, 2 of them are very well known. Duolingo, the most well-known language learning app in the world nowadays, Minecraft, and also our app, AS Press app, the merize dictionary. I've chosen some well-known apps because I really didn't want to kind of go into the detail and have to explain through them. So we'll just, hopefully you can borrow from some previous knowledge of these programs. So to start off with here, so gamification and game-based learning. So these terms are often used interchangeably, but there is kind of an important distinction to make between the 2. Second here. So gamification would be adding game elements or game mechanics to an experience to increase engagement and motivation. So for example, it could be something like a running dictation or a flashcard activity where kids are playing, getting points, but the learning isn't through the process of the game itself. It is kind of what the game is making that more enjoyable and more fun. On the other hand, game-based learning is a type of active learning experience within a game kind of framework. So the students would be learning towards specific objectives through the process of the game. Something like if you imagine kids playing a strategy type game where they need to kind of think through problem solving together in order to defeat another team. As they're doing that, they're learning through the process of playing that game, and that is sort of the end in and of itself. Really quick, we're going to move on to self-determination theory. And of course, I could probably talk about this for a couple of hours, but I'm going to give you the really short version here. First of all, I want to talk about a little bit of social science research that I find quite revealing about sort of the inner mechanics of motivation. So this was an experiment that was done, I believe, in the 80s or 90s. Social science researchers took 3 groups, took a group of preschoolers, and they divided them into 3 groups. Group A was asked to draw a picture. Group B was asked to draw a picture in order to get a trophy or a reward. And Group C was just asked to draw a picture like Group A. However, after they completed the task, they were given a reward for doing a good job. Now, question for you guys, if you can throw your answers in the chat. Which group do you think drew the best picture? Or just call it out if you like. Oh, I'm seeing a mixture of A's and B's. Yep, so the answer is, I've tricked you. All 3 of the groups drew a very good picture. They weren't actually evaluated qualitatively. The researchers didn't sort of say this picture was better than this picture. They all happily drew lovely pictures. Sorry about that. But the interesting thing is what happened the next week. So this time, the same 3 groups were asked to draw a picture again. But this time, all 3 groups got the same instructions that Group A got. Just go ahead and draw a picture. So group A happily jumped in and once again drew lovely pictures. Group B, the majority of the students decided to do something else, to opt for another activity. They didn't, if they weren't getting a trophy, they weren't really interested in drawing at all. Now, group C, do you think that they behaved more like group A or more like group B? This is not a trick this time. There is a correct answer. You can throw that in the chat. Okay, a mixture of A's and B's again. So the correct answer is yes, it was more like group A. So group C was not, the purpose of drawing the picture was not for the trophy. The trophy served as a reinforcement of their behavior, but it was not the reason for doing it. So really quickly put, what this tells us about motivation is that extrinsic motivators can be powerful in the short term, but they often interfere with intrinsic motivation. So group A was just drawing for the pleasure of drawing a picture just because they enjoyed doing it, an intrinsic type of motivation. And group B, on the other hand, were doing it. There was an if-then type reward. If you finish this, you get this. And that, as a consequence, made them less interested in drawing when there was no reward on offer. And group C, yeah, just like group A, they were rewarded afterwards. So it was not an if you do this, you can get this type of situation. So really quickly, in self-determination theory sees motivation as being on a scale, on a continuum, sorry, from motivation that is more external in nature and more internal in nature. So at the extreme end, intrinsic motivation, the desire to just do something for the joy of doing it itself. But then it's not as cut and dry. It's not either you do it for a reward or you do it for its own enjoyment. There are lots of kind of varieties in between there. So for example, something that's more internal in nature would be if you've set your own goal. For example, I want to study abroad next year, but I need to pass a certain test in order to do that. You've chosen that goal and you're working towards that. So that is kind of coming from within, even though there is sort of a reward at the end of it. So these types of motivation are going to be more powerful, more robust, and more kind of long lasting. So where this becomes really useful, I think, in terms of educational design or even classroom practice is the following. So according to self-determination theory, motivation increases and is more internal in nature when these three fundamental psychological needs are met. Excuse me. The first one is competence, the need to feel that if you make effort towards something, you will succeed, you'll be able to do it. Very important for not only kids, but people of all ages. Things that help learners develop confidence is praise for a job well done, specific praise on things that they're doing. Also, a really important point for competence is optimal level of challenge. If a program is too difficult, learners will find it frustrating and this will degrade their feeling of competence. And conversely, if it's too easy, they might also feel like they're wasting their time and they're not really developing at all. And this can negatively impact that. Relatedness is refers to the connection between the student and the teacher, or students and each other, or possibly even students and the outside world. So being connected to others is an important part of developing motivation. And finally, autonomy. So if students feel like they're doing things for themselves or they have some choice in things, they'll tend to be more motivated towards any particular activity. This could come in the form of having choices. It could be, something like project-based learning where they're choosing a topic and acting independently. The converse of this would be, for example, a teacher who is just telling students what to do. Oh, sit down, stop doing that, be quiet. This kind of treatment will slowly kind of degrade a student's sense of autonomy and gradually lead to demotivation. So any of those ideas, when I often in class, if I see a student that is particularly struggling with motivation or isn't really, getting into whatever it is we're doing, by thinking through these three needs, often I'll be able to identify what it is that I need to change for that learner in order to kind of get them more on board and more excited. Finally, again, something that could be discussed for over an hour, but I'm going to condense it into 2 minutes here. Bloom's taxonomy. So this is a hierarchy of cognitive thinking skills. So Bloom's taxonomy will divides cognitive thinking skills into lower order thinking skills, for example, remembering information, memorizing, understanding information, and then kind of applying what they've understood, to higher order thinking skills such as analyzing things, evaluating things, judging, selecting, supporting views, critiquing things, and finally creating, which is at the top there. Excuse me. And what I find particularly useful about this is that you can, by being aware of what types of cognition are required for certain tasks, you can structure them or scaffold them or support them in different ways to get better results. I think the trend lately is really towards these higher order thinking skills. We think that children should be, or in any educational program, we need to get kids using critical thinking, creating things and that sort of thing. And I agree that that's all really important, and that we tend to associate things like remembering and understanding with, you know, a teacher-centered classroom, with, you know, a teacher explaining things and rote learning and all of these kind of things that we see a bit as negative. But I think it's important to bear in mind that a combination of these can be particularly powerful. Students might need to remember or understand some concepts and then later use those as they're evaluating, creating, and that sort of thing. A real quick example, if you take a class, a typical class of, let's say, 8 to 10-year-olds, and you say, okay, draw a city, you might find that some of the learners are going to just sort of sit back and go, not really know how to approach the task, not start. Sure, it's really free and autonomous, but they just don't really know how to dig in. On the other hand, you'll have some students who are they love drawing and they're really excited, and they'll start drawing castles on clouds and magical waterfalls and stuff. And sure, that's beautiful and that's like fun, and possibly there's some learning going on there, but they might not be getting the best results. Now, if they'd learned, for example, about food production, energy, various concepts that would make a good city, they might then be able to sort of analyze different cities, evaluate different designs, and then create a city borrowing from those concepts and trying to solve sort of real problems in the process. So there you go. So that's Bloom's taxonomy, and we'll look at how this might come into play with the different apps that I look at. So I'm going to jump in next, and we're going to look at the world's most famous and most widely used language learning app, Duolingo. So Duolingo now currently, apparently after COVID, has gone up to about 500 million users. So that's 500 million users, quite an astounding number. And so one of the benefits of Duolingo is that you can use it to study various different languages, and even simultaneously, if you want to do 2 or 3, you can do different languages. And the design is relatively simple. There's a set path of lessons along points, you might kind of see here. And in each lesson, there's going to be a sequence of little mini exercises. For each one, so it's a spiral syllabus. So as it starts out really gradual with a few words and maybe a couple grammatical concepts that are not explicitly explained, and then bits of information are added in, and it's a spiral syllabus, so it sort of grows gradually as you go. It makes heavy use of gamified elements like points, lives, gems, experience points, and the notorious streak bonus. So some people will, go onto online forums and boast about, I've got a 1,000-day streak on Duolingo or whatever. So this is quite a powerful motivator. Now, right, what did I want to say about that? Okay, so really quickly, I'm looking at Duolingo in terms of self-determination theory, autonomy. So you can learn anywhere, anytime. It's a mobile app. It's also on PC. It's really, there's quite a lot of freedom in that sense. You can go at your own pace. You can start and stop lessons anytime. You don't need to wait for class time. You don't need to follow what a teacher says. On the negative side, it is a very rigid linear syllabus. You might, first lesson, you're going to learn a boy is eating an apple, or whatever sentence it is that they start off with. Then you move on to some basic greetings. You can't sort of choose what it is you want to learn. They might have some choices a little further down, but essentially it is this kind of straight line that you're following. Okay, so relatedness, this is an app that's primarily done alone. It's essentially, it's not something that you'd use with other people in a game kind of context. There is an online community, and I think that there are a lot of people that might use things like Reddit or whatever to talk about Duolingo. It's quite popular, so there is a community. So to an extent, there is an opportunity to reach out to other users, possibly not in the context of learning, just talking about your experience. Next, competence. So Duolingo does use a lot of trophies, rewards. When you complete an activity, you'll get some experience points, and there might be a small animation that kind of celebrates your success. And these are quite powerful in terms of maintaining students' motivation, making them feel that they've succeeded, that they've achieved something, rather than kind of, if you've completed a worksheet or something like that, you might get to the end and go, okay, I'm done. I don't know if I did right or wrong. And I don't know the purpose of it so much. So in that sense, it's quite positive. Now, the progression, the optimal level of challenge aspect of competence, the progression is quite gradual. However, it is, again, something that's set. It's not variable. It's not adaptive to the learner. So they might find the progression too slow and a little bit sort of under challenging. On the other hand, some might find it a bit too fast, in particular if you're using this with young learners who might not have a strong grip. They're not quite literate yet. They're not able to read and write confidently. Then this raises the bar of challenge quite considerably. So for older kids, it might be something that could be used, but for younger kids, I would definitely think that would make it a bit demotivating and a bit too challenging. In terms of cognition, we're really thinking of those lower order thinking skills. This will help you to remember some words. It'll help you to understand some basic grammatical concepts, but it doesn't really go beyond that. So in a real language classroom where you might be playing games and talking to other learners, or in the real world where you're trying to solve problems while using the language, we're getting up there. Duolingo kind of really just stops at that remember and understand kind of stage. So in terms of its suitability for young learners, I'd say maybe. There is, incidentally, a young learners version of Duolingo. I think it's called Lingo Kids, which might be more suitable. But Duolingo itself, I think the reading, writing aspect might make it particularly difficult, especially if the learners first, their native language doesn't use the English script, which is the case here in Japan. Moving along, Minecraft. So Minecraft, I don't know if anyone's experimented with Minecraft in an educational context here, but the potential with this one is quite large. There's a lot that can be done. So it's basically, this is a sandbox game. The users are in a 3D open-ended environment, and they can basically design, they can use coding, they can design anything that they really want to do. So looking at the time, I'm just going to keep on moving here, and we'll take a look at, oh, sorry, I do want to actually, in case that's a bit abstract, give you a few ideas of things that can be done for teaching language or teaching in general through Minecraft. So I mentioned coding. You're able to do simple block style coding within the environment to manipulate different things or design things. Of course, design history lessons. There are pre-made models of historic locations. You could take learners on a tour, have them do a treasure hunt in historical sites. Chemistry, they've got, for example, the different elements. You can do science, chemistry experiments, or break down different things into their elements to find out what they're made up of. So those might not be the most obvious ideas in terms of a language classroom, but this would kind of bring us into the area of content-based language teaching, or CLIL, where learners are using English in the process of learning subject or content matter. So lots of potential there. And then more in terms of a more traditional language classroom, there are some really cool things that can be done with reading. In the game, the teacher can design a little world where there's, for example, little signboards that they need to read. They can program little dialogue so that you might need to speak to different characters and choose appropriate responses to get items. Some of the cool examples that I've seen are, for example, escape rooms, where you might go in and get text hints and stuff like that. And the learners will need to read those and understand and try to problem solve to get out of a particular room. So lots of neat ideas. The sky is really the limit with this one. So in terms of autonomy, I mean, it doesn't get much more autonomous than this. It's an open, non-linear world. On the other hand, this can almost have the reverse problem. It can almost be too autonomous, in which, if you throw a bunch of kids into an open-ended world like that, are they going to learn, or are they going to run around and hide behind trees and start like hacking down animals and stuff like that? It might quickly degrade into a Lord of the Flies type of kind of situation. But yeah, teachers can, with careful planning, set specific missions and goals and make sure that they keep the learners on a path towards learning what they want them to learn, or other things. In terms of relatedness, it's a collaboratively played game, so learners should be able to work together to solve problems. They can chat together in the chat box. If they're playing online, the teacher might be speaking to them through through the phone or whatever, through the online platform. And yeah, it can be, if it's carefully planned, it can be structured so that it requires interaction, and we don't just have one student doing everything and the others kind of, again, hiding behind trees or cutting down animals. In terms of competence, so you do achieve goals by problem solving. And with that, you might have a concrete result. For example, if in the escape room example, you solve the puzzle, you manage to leave the room, success, that's very tangible. It's, that you've reached your goal. So that's very reinforcing. Some learners, on the other hand, might find that there isn't enough practice. So if you're trying to, teach phonics or something, and they're running around in the game trying to pick up letters and stuff like that to make words, there's kind of a lot of running around in a 3D environment for less kind of repetitions or practice instances for certain types of content. Also, some students might be experts at playing Minecraft and might be great at doing everything, and you might have a learner who's not particularly familiar with it, and they might also feel that they're not as good as the others, and regardless of the actual lesson content, or just because of the gameplay and the controls and familiarity. So this is really great for those higher order thinking skills, going beyond understanding, but applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating. There's lots of problem solving. It's a lot of active learning involved in that. And yes, definitely suitable for young learners. But then again, if you've ever taught a group of 15 or 20 first graders, can you imagine having them in an open-ended virtual world, being able to corral them and keep them focused and making sure that they are staying on task could be quite challenging. So a certain level of maturity might be required there. Finally, let's move on to the merize dictionary, and I've left myself 5 minutes to talk about this. So this is the app that I've been working on for the last couple of years. It's now being used by a lot of language schools in Japan and a few elementary schools. And we call this the merize dictionary. So the merize dictionary is a gamified learner dictionary that combines fully illustrated learner dictionary, voice recognition, spaced repetition, and extensive gamification. So it has RPG style elements to it, as well as kind of a kingdom building sort of Farmville element to it. So in the app, the learners progress through a story, and they'll play sequences of games as they go through, with the aim of being able to orally produce, accurately pronounce, and spell words and sentences or grammatical patterns. They can collect gold, which helps them to build their kingdom, which has potentially a quite complex economy aspect to it. So yeah, there's a lot of game elements in it, but this is an example again of gamification and not so much game-based learning. Let's have a quick look at a teaser video that's on the App Store. You'll see some Japanese in here, but it is not designed for translation. That can be toggled on and off. So if you do want to see the meanings of words, you're able to do that. Oh, I haven't got my sound shared. Hold on a second here.
Hungry. Mouth.
My English lessons are fun.
All right, so that's just a really quick teaser video from the App Store. It doesn't really show all of the features. A couple of things that weren't featured in there. There's also a chat kind of feature where you can have a conversation with the king of the kingdom. He'll ask you random questions and you can answer your own personal answer. So there's a bit of kind of more authentic practice in there. And there's a content library which has content from a range of popular textbooks for young learners, different tests, whether it's Aiken, Cambridge YLE, and different content packs for specific subjects. There's also, most importantly, a teacher dashboard, so the teacher can create content and send that to the students so that they're following along what they need to be learning. We've designed it as a flipped learning solution, so it's not intended to teach a language all by itself, as perhaps Duolingo might be designed. It's designed in order to get the rote learning aspects of language learning out of the classroom to maximize classroom time for the good stuff, which is the speaking, communicating, problem solving, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go really quickly through this. Autonomy. You can learn anytime, anywhere. You can go at your own pace. It's got a flexible content structure so that students can choose what it is that they want to learn and they can switch at any time. Also, the kingdom is something that's personalized. So the rewards are not just you get a trophy, you get gold, and you're able to build a custom kingdom how you like. So this is, something that adds to the autonomy. Relatedness, primarily this is also done alone. But again, this is something we created for students to do before class so that when they come in class, they can immediately start doing what, science experiments or, whatever it is, talking about more deep content and get that sort of rote learning aspect out of the way beforehand. In terms of competence, the kingdom building aspect is really good for this in that learners will accumulate gold when they finish the game, so they feel reinforcement for their success. And also there's this kind of goal setting thing that happens where learners will go, oh, I want to buy that sword. I want to, get the next castle or whatever. So this allows them to kind of set goals and work towards those. The progression depends on the learner. There's a lot of adaptive learning aspects in it, which I think I'm just about up on time, so I won't be able to go into too much detail. But yep, finally, this is, again, much like Duolingo, more useful for doing the remembering and understanding aspects of things, a bit of applying in the conversation with the chat bot sort of aspect. But mainly we want the concept of this is to get those done ahead of time in order to be able to make better use of class time. And start using those higher order cognitive thinking skills while using the language. Definitely appropriate for young learners. The retention rate for kids has been fantastic. Grades 1 through grade 6 are really the sweet spot. Once it gets into the teens and older years, some learners do feel that the game elements begin to interfere a little bit. If they've got an exam, entrance exams coming up or something like that, they may really just want to, have the vocabulary book with the red Anki sheet and just plow through it for the test. But yes, for slow and steady maintaining slow and steady motivation of elementary school age students, this works really well. And I'm going to stop it there because we're just right up at 11:30. And I think if anyone has questions, we'll save those right till the end. So I don't want to eat into Oliver's time. he can jump in and start to talk about his 3 apps. And then at the end, let's have a bit of question time. Yeah. Thank you very much.